Welcome to the next session of the course Managing Change, prepared by Guerrilla International Seminary. In the first part of our discussion, we have tried to see the types of the transformational change, or the types of the change, the transactional and the transformational, meaning of the change management, and so on and so forth. Second point of our second section is about process of organizational transformation. In the process of organizational transformation, the first one is mobilizing executive leadership. Top management must be involved in transforming organization. Because top management organizations are, or top managers are responsible for all resources and work done in a given organization. Second one is translate strategy into tangible and manageable terms. Our strategy, the wide one, the top one, strategy must be prepared in a manageable way, in a tangible way. So we need to prepare a kind of plan of what? Action. And this plan of action must be communicated to the people or to the employees, because these employees are expected to be communicated, because there are people who are expected to practice that change. Third point is align business and support units. So these activities or performance must be measured in order to assess if the organization is achieving optimal products or service levels. It has to be measured. In order to measure that one, we are expected to develop a kind of what? Standard. The third point is motivate teams for effective implementation. Teams or people must be what? Must be motivated. Overall strategy of the company or organization, its key objectives must be what? Must be conveyed in a manner that is understood and empowers the workforce. Workforce should know two things. One thing, what is the overall strategy of the organization? Workforce must know, again, another second point, what must be the key objectives of that organization. In doing this, workforce are expected to be familiar with how or method of the what? The change implementation, and why change is implemented. What's the purpose of this change? Why change is introduced? So these people should know clearly how and why. The first point is strive for perfection. That means repeating 5 strategic processes. These 5 strategic processes is, the first one is setting goals, appropriate goal, achievable goal, timely based goal which address the need in the interest of the community. The larger community and the individual interest must be clearly what? Identified. Then what? Situation must be analyzed. The existing reality must be analyzed. Sources of the information, sources of the resources, sources of the time, sources of many things should be clearly identified. What are enabling factors and hampering factors? We have to identify these two things. What are factors which are positively affect our change and negatively affect our change must be clearly identified. The third point is strategy formation. How we are going to apply that change must be what? Clearly known. the method, then implement that change. And the final point is, after implementation, strategy must be monitored. When do you monitor? Starting from goal formation up to what? Implementation. Each step must be clearly evaluated, clearly assessed. This helps us in order to shift our mindset for perfection in every section of the organization. When we go through these phases, setting goals, analyzing the situation, creating appropriate method, implementing that change, and finally evaluating or monitoring that change, then we are making a kind of what? Mindset of our organizational members. So the employee would realize how their contribution can make a difference. Workers in a given organization, to what extent employees are important for their organization, and how their contribution really bring a kind of change in their organization must be well understood by the what? By the people. Second point, the management too would begin to see positive effect of employees' contribution to bridge what? To bring that change. Both sides understanding. One side is workers convince themselves as they are important in order to contribute something for the benefit of the what? The organization. Managers also on the other side think that the contribution of employees is important for the what? For the improved productivity and service in their organization. What do you mean by nature of the organizational change? How do you just perceive change itself? We said earlier that change is the only thing constant in this world. There is always what? Change. Where? Wherever it is. When? At any time. Under which condition? At any condition. You will find a kind of change. Whether you accept or not, you will find a kind of change. So change is what? Inevitable. It is impossible to stop change. Rather, it is better to strive, to think about way of managing that change, rather than trying to stop the change. So it is what? It is crucial. It may be crucial. It is crucial, we said. How? Depending on the perception of the what? Change receiver. So organizational change takes place because of what? Internal and external factors. Internal factors push, energize people in order to what? In order to think about the what? About something new in their life. External forces also what? Also bring or put a kind of pressure on the people in order to adjust themselves with the what? With the changing environment. So the effect of change in one part of the organization creates fundamental changes in the rest part of the organization. Because international, this what we call it, organizations are what? Interdependent, interwoven. So any part, any effect in one part of that organization will adversely affect the other part of the organization. So this effect could be, the effect of this change could be what? Could be gradual or could be eventual. The effect of change in various sections of the organization take place in various degree and rate. Okay? Change at the grassroots level, change at the middle level management, change at the top level management have their own impact and their own degree and their own rate in bringing something new in the what? In that different level of management. What are some of the factors leading to organizational change? One is internal environment. Internal environment. Management policies. What are the policies being exercised in their locality, in your organization? Style of leadership also will what? Will just create a kind of discomfort. Systems, the way how system is working. Work procedures in a given organization. The other point is, and the most important thing is the attitude of employees toward this organization and towards what? Towards the leaders. Okay? How people or employees perceive themselves. So, second point is external environment. Political, social, legal, international, and labor market environment affect. War in any country outside, even in our country, could affect positively or negatively in our organization, in our country. So anything, any incident, any event, at any corner in the world, in our organization, in the nation, could affect your organization. So you better to read page 12 to 14 about the perspectives of organizational change from page 12 to 14. There is a very interesting module prepared by Guerrilla International Seminary. Please read in order to get in-depth understanding about what change is and how change is, when change is, why change is, where change is. You can find many things. So models of organizational change is, it's important to recognize and accept need for change and the goals for attaining such change. In order, when you talk about models of organizational change, one thing is better if we understand before action, before doing something, before taking any kind of measure, we have to understand two things. One thing, why change? Secondly, to attain what? Okay, the goal. There are broadly two models of change. Broadly two models of change. One is process-based models, which discuss how of change. Process model change. It deals with what? With process. Second one is content-based models. Okay? Process model change or process-based model and content-based model. Process-based model is about how change is, whereas content-based model is about what of change is, what the substance. Okay? Phases of the change process. There are two phases of the change process. One is Kurt Lewis model of the change. Second point is planning model. According to Kurt Lewis, there are three phases of change process which can enable the organization to move from the current state to the desired state. Okay? Three phases in order to bring what? The organization from current status to what? To desired state of life. These are, the three phases are unfreezing, changing, and refreezing. What does it mean by unfreezing phase? Unfreezing the situation means making employees aware and prepared for the what? For the proposed change. You propose something new for the organization. So people must be aware and what? Prepared mentally, emotionally, and physically. This is what we call it, unfreezing the situation. Change must not come as a surprise to organization. People should get adequate information about the change. Why change? When change? Where change? How change must be clearly known by the what? By the people. If change happens suddenly, it could be socially destructive because of the what? Mental preparation, psychological and emotional preparation, and resource preparation. Simply practicing that change could be what? Could adversely affect the work of the organization. The other point is changing or moving to the new condition. I said 3 phases. One phase is unfreezing the situation, preparing readiness of the people for change. Second one is changing or moving to the new condition. That means implementing the change. Okay? That means redefinition of behavior pattern. When you bring something new for your organization, so the behavior of people must be changed from the one, from the previous one. Method could be different. Approach of communication could be different. Work culture could be different. Communication system could be different. See? Therefore, this one is changing. Okay. Second point, changing or moving to the what? New condition. When new conditions are changed, this means that when you just redefine the behavior patterns, this is ready to accept such a change. When redefined change, redefined, then people could be what? Ready to accept change. Third point is new behavior adopted as a normal way of life. Be careful. The first one is creating awareness. Second one is moving to the new condition. That is changing. Third one is refreezing. This refreezing means new behavior adopted as a normal. That means internalizing the new behavior. Making your own culture that new behavior. Doing things with the newly adopted behavior. Working with the new adopted normal way of life. Therefore, unfreezing ensures the employees are ready for change. Change execute the intended change. Refreeze ensures that change became permanent. These are the 3 phases. Okay? Second model is what we call it? Planning model. Okay? What is the first phase is? Kurt Lewin's model of change. Under this, there are 3 phases: unfreezing, changing, and refreezing. Second one is planning model. Planned change in organization possesses 7 steps to change. Planned model, planned change in organization process has 7 steps. One is exploration. That means identifying areas where change is required. That means to prioritize. You see? Change may be important for all the community members, but for which one first? Okay? For which part of the organization first? Because of the scarcity of the what? The resource. So, areas where change is required, you have to first identify that part. Second one is entry. This entry is second step is entry. This one is dealing with certain expectation. What do we expect? Positively or negatively? About what? Introducing that change. The third point is diagnosis. Identification of specific goals toward this improvement. Okay. Which part of the goal really bring a kind of improvement on the organization must be clearly known. The other point is planning. It is designing strategies to handle resistance to change. You should not expect that all change could be practiced in your organization smoothly. But there is always what? Resistance. So you have to what? design strategies how you are going to handle this resistance. The other point is action or implementation. That is executing the change. You have to implement the change. The sixth point is that change must be what? Evaluated. That change must be stabilized. Evaluate the change. That evaluation enables you in order to measure the success and the failure of your what? Your practice or your implementation. Seventh step is what we call it termination, so that to initiate another. If your plan is achieved, you can plan for another thing. But if you are not able in order to get answer by this model for the observed problem, you may repeat the same thing. That means you have to repeat this from exploration to termination is what? A kind of circular. If you get answer for your observed problem, you may not repeat this one. But if your problem is not solved, then you have to go to step one, that is exploration. Therefore, you have to identify areas where change is required. Then repeat the same cyclic process. The another point is about chapter 6 is about communicating change. The key purpose of communication of change is for two reasons. One is to ensure the individuals understand what is going to happen and what is expected from them. Why we communicate change? To tell them or to introduce what is going on the ground. Secondly, to tell them what is expected from them in order to promote the practicability of that change in their institution. So, need for communicating change are 3 points. Why we communicate change? For 3 reasons. 1, pay adequate attention to the diverse interest, power relationship, and actions. In the organization, there are different kind of interests. There are different kind of power. There are different kind of relationship, and there are different kind of actions. So, these people with different interests, with different power, with different relation, and the action must be clearly understood about what we call it, about the change. One is this point. Second one is to make people understand the inevitability of the change. Okay? It's impossible to escape from change. It's impossible to stop the change. Therefore, the most important way, smooth way is, rather than struggling with the conflict, it's better if you think about the best way of coping or surviving with that change. How can we just make, or how can we get solution for this change? It's impossible to stop. Therefore, what we have to do is, which strategy really enable me or enable someone in order to handle this one, this change. The third point is to ensure that people share similar values, are aware what actions are appropriate to these values. Okay? When we communicate change, people or stakeholders in a given organization will have similar kind of what? Values. Not only these values, they are also expected to know what actions really enable them in order to get their appropriate value. The other point is to have consistency in actions and words. So communication of change is required. I just again advise you to read page 21 to 27 about communicating change, about most communication mistakes, methods and theories of communicating change, and the role of top management in communicating change in the module prepared by Guerrilla International Seminary. Please don't forget just to go through with these parts in order to get appropriate idea about why change or why communicating change is important. With this, let me take to process of change management. Change management is what? It's a process. A process. Every organization interact with what? Environment. And it's what? Interdependent and dependent with each other. Organization always get input from the environment, process that input, and send back the result to whom? To the environment. Therefore, there is a kind of what? Interaction. Second, changes in environment make it necessary for the transition for the organization to change its internal system and the process. Changes in environment make it necessary for the organization. Any change in the or outside the organization can bring or can push or can pressure a kind of change in that organization. So our internal system of the organization must be adjusted in line with the what? With the external pressure. Change in organization can be planned or it can be reactive. Planned means before happening of the what? The change. Reactive means after the happening of the what? The change. So sometimes this reactive one could be beyond the what? Beyond the capacity of the individuals. So planned change is intentionally designed and implemented, whereas reactive change is caused due to the unknown factor and happens as a response to sudden surprise. Sometimes it could be outside the involvement and outside the capacity of the individual. So there are change management process. These change management processes are logically divided into 4 phases or processes. Phase 1 is clarifying roles and expectation for change. Who is expected to do what? And what is the expectation of that change? Because must be what? Clearly defined. Second, identifying priorities of the change. Whose change comes first? Why? Okay. The priority must be given because of the what? Shortage of the resource. The other one is organizational development activities identify the priorities area. Okay. Give more emphasis should what? For the identified priorities. The other phase is change management, means implementing and evaluation. So change management process must be controlled. This process, we say there is change management. This change management is what? It's a process. This process must be what? Must be controlled. How can we control? The first one is preparation for the change. Okay? People must be what? Ready for the change. Identifying the required change. What is the required change? Determining major concerns of the change. What are some of the obstacles expected? Risks expected? Cost of change? Reason for change? All these things must be communicated and well identified during the what? Preparation for change. Second one is after knowing this, second point is about creating or developing what we call it a vision. Formulating clear vision. Helping people in identifying what is involved in the change and the way to manage the change. What will be involved in the change and how you are going to manage that change must be clearly known. The third point is plan the change. Developing appropriate strategy for the introduction of the change. method that we are going to handle that one must be clearly written down. Implementing the change is implementing the change. That means keeping records of the progress. Identification of the what? The gaps, and resistance to overcome this must be clearly known. Final point under change management process control is reviewing or assessing progress as compared to target results, determining the success of the project, and monitoring how stakeholders perceive that situation. Another issue is about resistance to change. That is the second section of this program. So this resistance to change represent an attitude or behavior that affects an unwillingness to support change. Unwillingness to support change can be manifested by delaying or slowing down the beginning of the project. It may be some obstacles or hindering factors or implementation by increasing its cost. Okay? So these are some of the resistances. Resistance is normal because of the unknown of the new things. With this, next part of our topic will be about the implicit and explicit dimensions of this resistance. We'll come back after a minute. Thank you very much.